All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Dear Editor. This is an educational series from the Research Medical Library where we discuss topics on scientific writing and publishing. And after today's session, I'm going to share the slides, and also we have a pretty extensive handout with some more resources um, summarizing what we talked about today and also just some additional resources for you for follow-up. We're also recording today's session, and I'll be sending out a link to the recording along with the handout after we're done today. You can also join the Dear Editor team, which there's a link here, and you'll have a link to it afterwards. If you want to continue the conversation or if you have additional questions that we didn't answer, and to have access to all of the recordings and handouts and everything that we've done in the past on this for this series. So joining me today is Stephanie Deming, fellow editor in the Research Medical Library, and we're going to be talking to you about some of our favorite tips for working in Microsoft Word. So before we get into that, I'm going to start things off with a trivia question for you. So does anybody here know when Microsoft Word first came out? You can just type your answers into the chat. Just straw poll on this. What do you think? When did Microsoft Word start? 95. Okay. You can Google it, of course, but it's more fun to guess. Right, 90s. Everybody seems to think it showed up in the 90s. Okay. Any others? Early 90s. Really zeroing in on that. Okay. Yeah. Um, well, interesting. Those were closer guesses than I expected. The actual answer is October 25th, 1983. So Microsoft Word is even older than you think it is. It is 41 years old. And the reason that I started with that question is to point out that Word's been around for a long time and that it has changed a lot over the years. So we as editors are really well aware of this. We tend to be pretty heavy users of Word, and many of us like to use a lot of these customization options, which have just exploded over the years. So we tend to hear about it or notice pretty quickly when those settings change. Which is, of course, all the time. So I've been to several of these Word tips type sessions over the years where editors share tips for working in Word. And I've always found them helpful, and I tend to learn something new each time I do it. And partly because every Word tips presentation that I've seen is different, and people tend to focus on different things. Yeah, Word perfect. A long time since I saw that. All right. So it's worth keeping in mind when we're doing our demonstration today that everybody's brain works a little bit differently. So some of these tips that we're going to share are going to work for you. Others maybe won't. Don't worry about it. Take away what you can from it that's helpful for you. One of the features of Microsoft products generally, and this can be a good thing or a bad thing, is they tend to give you more than one way to do a task. And in preparing for this talk, Stephanie and I found that, for example, we preferred to navigate within a document in different ways. So that's one of the things that we wanted to share with you today, is ways that you can look at a document, maybe in some ways that you haven't thought about. And we also tend to learn differently as learners. So I'm going to send, as I said, a recording of this session later along with the handout and some instructions showing you the things that we did today. If you want to go back and review it at a slower pace, maybe the handout's more helpful for you, maybe the recording's more helpful for you. So all of that's coming to you later. So here's just kind of a general overview of what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, Word's got hundreds of features and customizations, and we have 30 minutes. So we're just going to focus on a couple. And also, we want to point out up front, we are not Microsoft Word tech support. Trust me, we get annoyed at it too. So if your software is having issues, and the best place to go for that is for info. Another resource that I want to make sure you're aware of is we have, of course, the RML's Tool Time Tuesday, which is a bi-weekly series about software tools generally. That's all they do. There's also a very active discussion with that group on Microsoft Teams, and I'll send you a link to that in the handout as well. So if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend it. And also Tool Time has a session coming up about using track changes in Word. So if you really want Word features, I recommend that as well. Instead, today, we're not going to talk about the track changes since that's coming to you later. We're going to talk about some tips about how to maximize your use of Word in some very simple ways. These are features that we find helpful as editors, and we thought, these things might be helpful for you when you're revising and editing your own work. So just generally, these are kind of the things we're going to talk about today. Um, we're going to be using standard, MD Anderson enterprise versions of Word, which is probably what you have as well. If it looks different, you're going to have to search around in the settings to find that. But the text that we're using today that you're going to see in the Word document is actually from a published article, and this is the article. We're not going to talk about any of the content in the article. It's just useful as an example. So I wanted to make sure you knew what that was. Okay. Whoops. That is not what I wanted to go to. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time, if it will allow me, and turn things over to Stephanie. So she's going to pull up that document that I was talking about a minute ago so that you can see it. Looks like there's her screen. All right, great. I can see the document, so I think you've got it up. I'll turn
Great.
it over to you.
Thanks, Erica. All right. So thanks a lot, Erica. And for those of you joining us today, if you happen to be at a computer that has Microsoft Word on it, you might find it helpful to open Word and try out the tips as I present them. So the first tip I'm going to present is a shortcut for zooming in and out. And for this tip, you're going to need a mouse with a scroll wheel. And with your cursor in the document where you want to scroll, you want to hold down the control key on your keyboard. That's the key that has CTRL on it. And then you can, with your mouse wheel, scroll up to zoom in or scroll down to zoom out. And this is really helpful if you have a document with very small figure or table and you want to see more detail. So easy to just scroll in and out. If you want to get back to 100%, you can come up here to the View tab in Word and hit this little button that says 100%, and it'll bring you right back. You can also see the amount you're zooming by using this Zoom scroller in the bottom right corner of your window. You can see it goes up in increments of 10% as I zoom in, and down by increments of 10% as I zoom out. Um, anyway, and again, you can just click 100% to get back to 100%. If for some reason you want a very precise zoom, you can click this zoom button in the View tab. And in this percent box, you can indicate a specific percentage, like 106%, and hit OK. And Microsoft Word will do that. So I'm going to go back to 100%. Actually, I'm going to leave this at 120 for improved viewing. My next tip is a tip for comparing parts of a document. So let's suppose that you're getting ready to submit this research article manuscript to a journal, and as a final check, you want to make sure that the data in the abstract match the data in the main part of the paper. So you could scroll back and forth between the abstract and the main text, or you could use various shortcut keys to move back and forth, but that's kind of clunky, not very convenient. So Split Window offers a really nice solution. It allows you to view two separate parts of your document, even if they're far apart in the document, simultaneously on one screen. So I'm going to go up here to the View tab, and I'm going to hit this button that says Split. And now, as you can see, my window is split into two parts. And there's a little horizontal line here that separates them, and I can drag this line up or down how I want. So what I want to do is I want to have the design, oops, let me fix something real quick. Okay, I want to have the design, setting, and participants paragraph of my abstract in the top window. And then down here in the bottom window, I want to have the trial design and participants part of the methods section. So here in the top, I have part of the abstract. And here in the bottom, I have part of the methods section. Now I can compare easily. So I can see in the abstract, this non-randomized clinical trial with a historical control conducted at a single cancer center in Seoul, and then I have these dates. So let's highlight that. And now here in the main text, I can see this non-randomized clinical trial with the historical controls conducted at a single cancer center in Seoul. And then I can easily just scan back and forth with my eyes and see, yes, those dates match. Then back in the abstract, I can see we have some inclusion criteria. Patients were included if they had suspected or confirmed non-small cell lung cancer scheduled for curative surgery. Let's look back here in the main text. Okay, here we have the inclusion criteria, suspected or confirmed, his NSCLC scheduled for curative surgery. So I won't go on, but you can see that this split screen offers a very convenient way to check two parts of the document at the same time. And then to get rid of the split, I can come up here to the View tab and hit Remove Split, or I can just double click this line and it will go away. And now you can see this highlighting that I applied to the abstract is there. And then also, if I move down in the document, you can see that the highlighting I applied in the main text is also there. And that's because even though I was working in two different windows, one on top and one on the bottom, those windows were showing parts of the same document. Okay. So, and as I was demonstrating split, you probably noticed that there was a panel that opened up on the left side of the screen, and that is called the navigation pane, and it's super useful. So I was opening it up using Control F, which is a shortcut key, but you can also open it and close it by clicking this button next to navigation pane in the View tab. Okay. And when you have this navigation pane open, you can use it to search. So let's say, for example, I'm going to search for the abbreviation HRQOL, and Word is going to show me in this navigation pane every single time HRQOL appears in my document, and it says there's 10 results. And if I click on these instances, Word will take me to where those instances appear. Another thing I can do, I'm going to clear this out, is I can use the navigation pane to navigate my document. So if I click on Pages here, Word gives me thumbnail images of all the pages in my document. So, and if I click on one of these images, I'll be taken to that part of the document. So maybe I want to go to the reference list for some reason. I can scroll through these thumbnails and I can see, okay, here I can sort of just barely see, but this looks like a reference list. And yes, if I click that page, there I am. So it's a really convenient way to jump around in your document. Maybe I want to look at a table. I can just scroll down here. There's my table. There's a figure. It's a very convenient way to move around. And the other way you can navigate with the navigation pane only works if your document was formatted so that the subheadings have styles applied to them. So like if you, when you made your document, if you styled the major subheadings heading 1 and the next level subheadings heading 2. So if the subheadings are styled and you click headings, you will get a list of the styled headings here. So this is effectively an outline of your document. And if you click on one of these parts of the outline, you'll be taken to that part of your document. So it's very convenient. Erica, I see that there are messages in the chat. Is there anything I need to stop and address right now?
No, everyone is commenting on these are great.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks. Okay. So a minute ago, I showed how to use split to look at two different parts of a document, one on top of the other. But sometimes you would rather look at two parts of the document side by side. And the way you do that in Word is to use a feature called New Window. And you get there by clicking New Window on the View tab. So I'm going to do that. And now you can see at the top of my screen, there's a number 2 at the end of the file name that wasn't there before. So that's telling me this is the second instance of this document. So now I have 2 instances of this document on my screen. And I'm going to arrange them so that I have one instance on the left and one on the right. And even though there's 2 different windows, Word considers these 2 different parts of the same document. So anything I do in one instance or one window will be reflected in the other instance or the other window. Okay, so let's suppose maybe I want to make sure that what I have said in the results section about table 2 matches what is actually showing in table 2. So I can put the results text about table 2 on the left, and then I can put table 2 on the right, and I'm going to use our zoom feature to make it a little bit bigger. And now it's very easy for me to look and see, do the numbers, percentages, and confidence intervals on the left and the p-values match the ones in the table? I can just scan back and forth very easily with my eyes. The only disadvantage with New Window is that depending on your window size, the ribbon at the top might be a little bit condensed so that you can't actually see all the ribbon commands. You may have to, like, for example, in this zoom button, I can't see all the zoom options. I have to click this little down arrow and then I can see the options. So that's really sort of a minor inconvenience. If you're working on a very small screen, the ribbon might be so smashed that you can't really see. And so you have to keep going back and forth between, expanding and um, minimizing your window, which is kind of a pain. The best way to use New Window is if you have two monitors, you can put one window on one monitor and the other window on another monitor. And that's in fact how I usually work. And I think a lot of us these days working from home, we have two monitors. Okay. You saw just now that I arranged the two instances of the document really quickly, and I want to show you how to do that. I'm going to go back and do New Window again. Okay, and now I've got my two different windows here, two different instances of the document. So I could drag these around on my screen and grab the edges of the windows, and I can manually set these up, but that's slow and tedious. It's much faster to use a feature called Snap. And this is a general Windows feature. It's not specific to Word, but it works great in Word. So I'm going to have my cursor in one of these windows, and I'm going to hit the Windows key in my keyboard, hold it down, and then press the left arrow. And that's going to snap this window to the left half of my screen. And then on the right half of my screen, I have a gray background, and in front of it are the options for what I can show here. And I don't really have a lot open on my computer right now, so my only options are the other instance of Word and then my File Explorer. But I'm going to click the other instance of Word, and it pops it up there very nicely. And I don't have time to go into Snap in more detail, but I encourage you to explore it. If you go up in any Windows program, and you hover your mouse over this maximize minimize button at the upper right, you can see all these different possible layouts and you can play around with them. Okay, I don't have time to go into detail about everything on your handout, but I do want to point out that the handout has shortcuts for moving around in documents, for selecting text in documents, and for formatting text. And if you use Word a lot, I think it would probably save you time in the long run to teach yourself some of these keyboard shortcuts. They make it very convenient to do a lot of things. Like one of the shortcuts is if you hold down the Control key and hit the up arrow, you can bounce back and forth through your document by paragraph. And then if you add Shift to that, you can select by paragraph. That's just one example. The handout also has keyboard shortcuts for applying bold and italics and underlining and superscript and subscript. And you can't see how I'm doing that, but I'm applying this formatting just using my keyboard. You can also come up here to the Home tab and use this font area to apply formatting. And if you don't use Word a lot, that works great. But if you are a heavy user of Word, I think over the long term, you might save yourself time by teaching yourself a few shortcuts. The handout also has shortcuts for copying and pasting text. I think most people are familiar with Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste. But what if you want to paste without formatting? So let's suppose that for some reason, I want to make a copy of this byline with author names, and I don't want these numbers to be superscripted. I want them to be on the line. Well, if I just do copy and paste, they're going to be superscripted. But there's an option called Paste Special that will allow me to strip out the formatting. And to do that, I'm going to hit Control Alt V. And now I get this Paste Special dialog box, and I can choose Unformatted Text. And now you can see the formatting that was originally here is stripped out, and this text adopted the formatting of where I placed it in the document. And the position I chose had no special formatting, so everything is just plain text on the line. Another thing you can do, and this sort of blew my mind when I learned about it, was you can select vertically. So let's imagine you've got a list of MD Anderson buildings and their street addresses, and you want to copy just the names of the buildings. If I try to do that with my mouse, it's going to pick up the addresses because this is not a table. This is just text with tabs in it. So the methods that are on your handout above this point and the methods I've talked about earlier won't allow you to select just the building names. But if you hold down the Alt key and use your mouse to select, you can select vertically, which is super cool. And then if I paste, I get just the building names. There's only one thing you have to be aware of when you do this. If you try to paste just with Control V, Word puts each line of text at the beginning of an existing line of text, so you end up with a mess. So you have to use that Control Alt V and do unformatted text. And then it puts things where you want. And you can see that because this was unformatted text, stripped out the original formatting, gave it the formatting of where I had inserted it, and it was inserted where there was superscript, so that's why it's now superscript. So, okay. Another super handy feature is Control Y to redo last action. So let's suppose that I have an abstract and I want to change all these subheadings so that they're uppercase. So I can come up here to the font part of the Home tab and I can use this case change button and I can just do uppercase and then do uppercase again. That's not a big deal, but it gets kind of tedious to do it over and over. So better would be to go ahead and do uppercase and then to just come down here and hit Control Y. And because making something uppercase was the last thing I did, every time I hit Control Y now, it will automatically apply that formatting. It's super helpful. I sometimes will also use this if I have to do weird paragraph indents, like maybe for some reason, let me show my ruler. I have to indent the first line of every paragraph in the apps. Maybe every paragraph in, I don't know, the first part of each section. So there's the first paragraph of the abstract. Now I have to do the first paragraph of key points. I can just do Control Y here. Oops, I think I can just do Control Y here. Yeah, and then it will automatically make that change for me. It's just a faster way of applying formatting. Okay. Now we come to my very favorite interesting feature of Word, and that is read aloud. So I'm just going to show you how it works. I'm up here on the Review tab, and there's a button called Read Aloud, and I'm going to hit this button.
Importance emerging evidence suggests that wearable devices are feasible for monitoring physical activity among patients with lung cancer.
So Word will read your document to you. And you can come up here and you can adjust the settings. You can change the reading speed, and you can also change from a typically female to male voice if you want. But, you know, as editors, we always review all text and images with our eyes. But sometimes I will also review a document or parts of it with my ears using the read aloud function, because sometimes my ears will catch things that my eyes don't. So, and you may find that to be the case. And I'll especially do this if I'm writing a very important email and I've edited it so many times that my eyes have stopped seeing it. I will metaphorically stop seeing it. I will run read aloud on the email to make sure that I didn't leave anything in there that I shouldn't. And again, as editors, we will never send anything back to an author without visually inspecting all parts of it, but hearing can also be helpful. So before we end, I have just a few quick tips about reviewing text. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to ask Word to spell check this document. Okay, so what is going on here in the second paragraph of the abstract? There's a bunch of words that are squiggly underlined, which means that they're spelled wrong according to Word. But we can look at these and we can see that with the possible exception of HRQOL, everything here is actually spelled right. Well, if we go over here in the right, we can see what's going on because the spelling dialog box has ortografía, which is the Spanish word for spelling, instead of spelling here. So what happened is the proofing language for this paragraph got set to Spanish. It's super common for this to happen in an institution like MD Anderson where we value international collaborations. But to fix this problem, if you want to have it spell checked in English, you can select the problematic text, go up here to language, and then set the proofing language to English. And now the only thing underlined is HRQOL. Sometimes we mentioned, I think in the title of this presentation, sometimes Word works against you rather than for you. I'm going to show you an example of that. So let's suppose that I'm writing an article about the electronic health record, and I want to abbreviate it EHR. Huh, I just typed EHR and now it says HER. So I'm going to do that again. EHR space. Word is helpfully fixing this word for me. So if I don't use EHR a lot, then this is helpful. But if I'm writing about electronic health records all the time, this is super annoying. So I can turn this off. And this is an autocorrect option. And autocorrect is a source of a lot of pain in Word, and it's probably where you should go if Word seems like it's working against you. So to get to that, you go to File, Options, Proofing, and then Autocorrect Options. And there is a section here called Replace Text as You Type. And if I can search here, and if I go to EHR, I can see, yep, Word is set. So every time it sees EHR, it automatically changes to HER. I'm going to delete that and then hit OK because I don't want Word to do that. So now if I type EHR space, Word's going to leave it alone. It thinks it's spelled wrong, and that's fine, but it's not going to change it. Another thing that can happen is you may spell check a document and then have this sinking feeling that maybe you told Word to ignore something that was actually wrong, but you can't remember where it was. You can fix that. You can ask Word to recheck the document from scratch. So again, you go to the same place, File, Options, Proofing, and you click this button that says Recheck Document. And Word asks, this operation resets the spelling checker and the grammar checker so that Word will recheck words and grammar you previously checked and chose to ignore. Do you want to continue? Yes. And that will solve that problem for you. My very last tip is that it's sometimes helpful to check the custom dictionary in Word to make sure there's no stray entries in there. What can happen is if you're spell checking and Word points out a word that's spelled wrong. Let's say clinical trial is spelled wrong. Okay. And Word comes to this word and you accidentally say add to dictionary. You wanted to actually fix this, but you get distracted or you're confused. You hit add to dictionary. Uh-oh. Now every time Word comes across clinical trial, it's going to ignore it and think it's okay. You can fix that. Come over here to File, Options, Proofing. And then you want to go to your custom dictionaries and choose the roaming custom dictionary and edit the word list. And now I can scroll through here and I can find there is clinical. I do not want that in my dictionary because if it's in there, Word will ignore it. So I'm going to get rid of that. Hit OK. OK. All right. So that is the end of my formal presentation. And looks like we're almost at the end of our half hour, but we may have time to answer questions if we have some, Erica. Erica, I think you're still muted.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Yes, there were a couple of questions in the chat. We were answering them as we went along, specific
Thank
type
you.
questions. Someone was asking about images in Word, and I think we could do a whole talk about that. So, yeah,
Definitely.
that's tricky. Um, but yes, and everything that Stephanie showed you, we do have a handout, and I'll send it along with a copy of the recording today, so that you can go back and review everything again. There were some very helpful tips in here, and I saw a number of people saying, "Yay, this is great!" So very happy to see that. Um, and okay, I don't think we have any other questions at the moment. But I do want to remind you that you can always join uh, the Dear Editor team. There's a link to it here, and I will also send that around in the handout with the resources that we have. I also wanted to point out one of the things that's on the handout is a link to our library calendar. And coming up later this week, we have a presentation on um, altmetrics, author altmetrics. That's what it is. So make sure you tune in for that. That's something you're interested in. And again, Tool Time Tuesday is coming up, I believe, next week. And at one of the next upcoming sessions of that, they're going to talk about using track changes in Word. So if you found this helpful, I would recommend attending that as well if you can. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think we can end our formal presentation today. I can hang around a couple of minutes if anyone has any other questions, but otherwise, as I said, we'll be sending around resources for you to review later. And thank you all for attending today. A great afternoon.